RVs not than 72-hour limit.
Yeah, that's the oversized vehicle ordinance, which is, I believe, going back to City Council. But what I can tell you is that I'm absolutely thrilled with the mayor's budget, and I know it's going back to City Council. We'll be presenting that on May the 5th. Included in that budget is 8 of our police investigative service officers that will be charged with exactly that, to go out and address those needs, which allows our officers to go out and enforce other higher priority calls. So those quality of life calls, which were lacking because of the budget cuts that we had several years ago, when we had to lay off, unfortunately, our police service officers, they're back now. We have 8 of them in the budget, and we're looking forward to addressing some of those needs.
Just because I imagine timing's a part of that question for whoever asked the question. We are currently waiting for Coastal Commission approval of our oversized vehicle ordinance. Right now, it can go in effect west or east of the 5, but we want to do them all at once so that all the RVs aren't displaced from one area or another. So we're currently waiting for that. We think it'll be a few more months before we get before them and hopefully their approval. In the meantime, we're not wasting time. We're developing the online permitting system, hiring the officers who will do the enforcement so that when we get that go-ahead from Coastal, we'll be able to actually enforce this citywide. So my expectation is you'd see that sometime this calendar year. Probably later, it would be my guess, but nevertheless, soon.
All right, thank you. What are your plans to make our streets safer for bikers and walkers from distracted drivers on their phones?
No, that's a great question. I tell you, we just came off of a big, huge media campaign. Actually, it's a couple more days after this month, and this is Distracted Driving Month. We have done awareness campaign regarding that. Our officers have gone out and issued citations. And you talk about the cyclists. I am an avid cyclist, bicyclist. And stay tuned, because in about right before summertime, we're going to have another campaign out there that we're going to be talking about exactly that, sharing the road between vehicles and our cyclists, because even if the cyclist is correct, guess what? We don't have that tonnage around us. We're still going to lose. So it's critically important that we look out for each other. Everybody shares the road. So stay tuned. You'll have an opportunity to go out riding with us.
Thank you. Do you support a truly independent citizens review board on police practices with subpoena power and independent case review?
You know, I was talking to somebody who did work in internal affairs for a couple of years. I believe our civilian review board does a remarkable job, an exceptional job in going over the cases that they have with us, and I fully support the civilian review board as it stands right now in our department.
Does the San Diego Police Department have a role in the licensing of bars and marijuana dispensaries in North Park?
I can speak to the bars that we do weigh in as far as our vice squad as to community concerns and everything else as to the conditions of that. We do weigh in. The policy is being developed right now for marijuana dispensaries. That is, I believe they could have pulled the application process on Friday, and the policy is still being written for exactly what that's going to look like.
Thank you. During San Diego Police Department March raid of Cheetah's strip club, officers took extensive photographs of licensed workers for, quote, investigation purposes. Why is the San Diego Police Department building and maintaining a surveillance database of law-abiding citizens, and why is the adult industry being singled out among other similar regulated sectors for tax-funded tracking?
I can tell you, I can't talk specifically because, it's my understanding, a claim has been filed on that particular incident, but what I can tell you is that we are thoroughly looking into it, but let me just talk in general terms. A police-regulated business, which would include an adult entertainment business, which could include also a bar, several other places that have permits by the police department that are police-regulated. As part of that, as part of those conditions, we go in to conduct compliance checks on that. And so it is not unusual for us to go in and conduct a compliance check regarding the individual license and the license of that establishment.
With machine guns?
Is it unusual to go in and riot gear?
And machine guns?
Again, I can't discuss a specific for what you're saying, but I will tell you, when officers officers go in, sometimes they go in overtly. They have their police, they are identified as police because we are armed. Yes, we have our handguns. I'm armed right now. The officers around here are armed right now. We are police officers. And if they're not in uniform, then if you go in that we want people to know that someone's walking in with a police with a handgun, we are going to have vests that are on. We do wear bulletproof vests that show that we are the police department.
Okay, what is the biggest challenge San Diego Police Department faces today?
The biggest challenge that we're facing today is our recruitment and our retention. Again, and equipment needs, and again, that's why I'm so very grateful to Mayor Faulkner and Council President Gloria and the entire City Council that this budget that here right now is going to address some of those needs as another step, hopefully a continued step as we continue to do that. As we talk about, think about this, half of our police department is eligible to retire in the next 4 years. So it's, again, trying to retain our officers for as long as we can and recruit the very best police officers from all communities in an extremely competitive market. So right now, recruitment, retention, our equipment needs are some of the biggest challenges that we're facing.
Thank you. This is a two-part question. Does the San Diego Police Department have a specific written policy requiring officers to respect the gender identity and preferred pronoun? And if not, are you willing to initiate such a policy? The second question is, what is being done to reach out and recruit officers from the transgender community?
Let me take the second part of the question first. We are reaching out to all communities. Again, we're very grateful for the recruiting money that we have been given from the City Council that has allowed us to go and have community fairs throughout our entire community. Also be able to travel to military bases that are out here, put on community fairs. Also inside the San Diego Police Department, we just had another successful one on Saturday that all communities we want to go out there, calling any one of our recruiters, going on ride-alongs. So we're recruiting from all different communities. We encourage, if you know anyone that wants a career, that you have an opportunity, think about this, to make a positive difference in somebody's life at the worst possible moment. A career where you can use every bit of knowledge that you've ever learned, no matter how important or seemingly meaningless, because you're going to come across such a variety of situations. Your teamwork, committed, want to help others, service above self, come join us. Come join us. And that first part of the question, as far as the gender,
The question is, does the San Diego Police Department have a specific written policy requiring officers to respect the gender identity and preferred pronoun? If not, are you willing to initiate such a policy?
I'm not 100% sure who asked that, what exactly that is, but we certainly have a policy that we respect all individuals. That is expected that all of us will respect everyone, no matter who they are, no matter what gender, no matter what race, what religion, respect everybody.
Thank you. Do you feel there could be better customer service? If so, what specifically are you going to implement for better internal and external citizen oversight to measure customer service outcomes?
I think we can always improve. No matter what critical incident we go on, we have a debrief. And the reason why we have the debrief, and we're very critical about that, is no matter how well it may have gone, we are very critical amongst ourselves because we believe we can do better. So we can always believe we can do better. I talk about that we're going to raise the bar, and when we meet the bar, we're going to raise it again. And when we meet that bar, we're going to raise it again. One of the things that we're doing that is going to be coming out is that it's a customer service, police service, random. We're going to be the different stops or contacts that we have with individuals. We are going to be following up randomly at each of the divisions to ask that customer service question. To ask that. How did that interaction go? Is there a way that we can improve? So that's something that we're going to be instituting here very shortly. In addition, we're reaching out more like that we've had before in our social media. So many individuals now are on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and we have a very active now Facebook page, a very active Twitter page, reaching out, again, another way to connect with all of our communities.
A friend says the curfew sweeps are racist because they are only conducted in City Heights. Is this true?
No, it's not true. We conduct curfew sweeps in all communities, maybe not as frequently as some of communities, but we have conducted curfew sweeps at all communities. And the reasons for that is safety. We want to make sure our children are safe. And when we go out there and we do compliance checks and individuals that are out there past curfew, the reason why those laws are there is because it's to protect the children too. We have found in some of the cases that the children that are out there past curfew is that they've had no parental guidance. We've had wraparound services as we've gone back to the to where they live, that they're having other challenges, and we do everything that we can in a wraparound for them to make sure that they get the resources that they need. And we do those in all communities.
So why the glaring disparity in lower income neighborhoods, especially those South Bay?
I'm asking
Why the glaring disparity on the intersection of class and race in neighborhoods south of Maine and in lower income neighborhoods in San Diego?
Are you asking why we conduct more curfew sweeps in other
More frequently. I know you
neighborhoods?
said something about poor parenting in those neighborhoods. I didn't really hear anything specific.
We conduct them in all neighborhoods. The question was, do we connect them in all neighborhoods? Yes, we conduct them. And the whole goal of every time that we go out there is to make sure that our children are safe, our community is safe in all neighborhoods.
Why don't you go after the criminals instead of the kids?
What steps are being taken to reduce the amount of homeless people on the streets and in the parks? I do not feel safe to walk in my neighborhoods alone at night. Thanks for all your work in the Crips gang arrest.
You know, homelessness is a very challenging issue that we have out here. All of us are committed to doing everything that we can. And again, going back to the budget, we're grateful for more money for our HOT team and our SIP team, and certainly our NEBA program team, to go out there. And again, we talk about connections housing. We talk about working with the military, because many of the homeless that are out there, some of them are homeless veterans. Some of them are women, they're children. And it's not a one-size-that-fits-all. So we have to do more as a community. And remember, it's not against the law to be homeless. It's not against the law to be homeless. So we have to do everything that we can to get those that are out there the help that they need, and we work very hard on that.
Thank you. After the townhouse meeting in Southeast, I called the San Diego Police Department to ask about Chief Zimmerman's email. I was passed around to at least 5 people before finally given a generic mayor@sandiego.gov address. How can you be accountable to claims of hearing complaints? What number do we call to talk to you?
Okay, you got a couple different things. I have no problem giving out my email address. Everybody has it. Okay? It is szimmerman@pd.sandiego.gov. And for those that have, I don't know if you're asking about the 619-531-2777 is the number for the chief's office. And I'm also going to give you another number here. People have asked about our hotline number. You want to call in complaints. Our hotline number is 619-531-2672.
Thank you. You have encouraged citizens to report incidents of police sexual misconduct and racial profiling, but these problems seem to be beyond the actions of a few individuals. What steps are you taking to end this pattern of abuse within the San Diego Police Department?
As I touched on earlier, I want to put some things in perspective. Every year, we get approximately 1.3 million calls into our communication center. We don't get the calls that say, please hurry, our child made out alone, and the cake is on his farm. We get the calls that say, please hurry, our child's thinking of killing himself. Someone was just stabbed, someone is breaking into our house. Please hurry. 1.3 million calls. We don't respond to 1.3 million calls, but somebody answers that call. 1.3 million, either our hardworking dispatchers, our officers go out. We have hundreds of thousands of contacts, arrests, citations, field interviews. We come in contact every single year, our officers, with millions upon millions of people. You don't hear about that. You don't hear about all of those calls because we do our jobs very well. And to the very few, as I touched on earlier, to the very few that make the terrible decision to discredit our badge and dishonor our noble profession, that is not going to be tolerated. And that's what we talk about, the different policies and procedures that have been put in place. Our professional standards unit coming back. Maybe it is already back. Talking about the assessment, looking at our hiring practices. Let's talk about our hiring practices. We have gotten it right over the years, thousands upon thousands of times, but we have not gotten it right every time. And that is why I welcome the assessment to come in, to take a look at our hiring practices, our training, our supervision. Because if they can even show us one way how to improve, we welcome that. It goes back to what I talked about as we handle these critical incidents that are handled very well. But no matter how well it's handled, we believe we can do better. And that's why we welcome the assessment. That's why I have additional policies that are in place.
Thank you. Can you explain the new San Diego Police Department policy that you've talked about that says women must be escorted by more than one male officer? Is that policy written down? Can the public have access to that? We understand that San Diego Police Department will be audited by the Department of Justice. Can you explain in step-by-step detail how?
That's the assessment that I talked about. You talked about the auditing that the Police Executive Research Forum, they are digging through, completely independent. They are digging through many aspects within our police department, and they're coming out next week again to conduct interviews and have a community forum. As far as the policy about with women, yes. Again, for the public trust, that policy is that there would be 2 officers to transport women. And that policy is working very well. One of the other reasons why we have body-worn cameras right now, and at police departments that have deployed the body-worn cameras, something interesting. Some of those police departments, complaints against the officers have been reduced by more than 80%. Because not only does it hold the officer accountable to what's going on, it holds the public accountable. And we are still currently in the testing mode at Central Division. And what those officers that are testing those cameras right now are telling us, exactly that, is that the demeanor toward them, for the individuals, is greatly improved because they know that they're on camera also. So we welcome those cameras.
Many homeless in Trolley Park, Barn Park, and campers under the Vermont Street Bridge and above Orange to 163 North. What solutions do we have?
Yeah, we'll have, as a matter of fact, I think somebody called that in earlier today regarding that. As you see things that you want us to respond to, please call it in. Please call it in, and we will work, depending on whose area that is, we will work with either if it's CHP, if it's Caltrans, whoever it happens to be, we'll work with them to everything that we could possibly do to respond to that situation. And again, regarding the homeless, to try to get those wraparound services, try to get them a place where they can go.
Why are transgender people put in holding cells that don't match their gender identity?
I don't know if there was a specific complaint or a specific incident regarding this, but I know at the police department we are very aware of sensitivity to different cultures, to transgender community, LGBT community, to any community that is out there for the concerns of that. And if that was something that had happened, we will certainly look into it if it's a specific complaint. But that is not a practice for us. The practice is to treat everyone with dignity and respect.
Thank you. Regarding the reports of sexual violence and assault by police officers, Will a mandatory anti-rape training be established to teach officers these acts are not okay? Also, regard to handling cases of sexual assault by civilians. Due to the problems in handling and lack of handling cases of sexual assault and rape, do you plan to establish a mandatory training on how to properly handle such cases and avoid the survivor's trauma?
Two separate questions here. The first question had to do with our officers. Our officers can serve every day with honor, distinction, professionalism. To those very few well-publicized cases that are either not on our department anymore, they're going through the process. We're not going to tolerate any behavior that discredits our badge or dishonors our noble profession, because our officers, civilian staff, work every single day so hard for the betterment of all of our communities. Again, with honor, distinction, professionalism. For the calls that you're talking about for civilians that we go and investigate, we take every single call that we have extremely serious. Extremely serious, thoroughly investigate that. Because we know the community's trust is paramount.
You have invited the Department of Justice to conduct an independent assessment of the San Diego Police Department. These kinds of assessments, however, do not ensure that reforms will be made. Why have you resisted Jane Doe's demand for a federal monitor which will enforce reforms? And when the assessment is completed, how will you ensure changes in the department are made?
As I said earlier, a couple different times now, is that all the different changes that we're putting in place completely welcome the assessment. I've said this many times here, I've said it publicly, I've said it in every town hall, I've said it in our department. The improvements that are identified with the assessment, I plan to implement. Can't be any more clear about that. The improvements that are identified from this assessment, I plan to implement.
At the last town hall meeting at Cherokee Point Elementary, you mentioned that officers will be required to turn on body cams before making a stop or encounter with San Diego residents. This is very disappointing. Some officers who are using abrasive practice can simply forget to turn them on to avoid accountability. Why can't officers simply be required to have body cams on at all times during work hours, as has been done with proven effectiveness in other cities?
We have looked at many other cities as to what their policies are. Let me explain what these cameras are. The cameras are always on. They're always on. They're on a 30-second loop. So as the officer will go to make a contact, will press the record button, then the camera starts recording, and it goes back 30 seconds. The policy is, we talk about right now, we're just about done with the final policy, and it is going to be all enforcement contacts, without exception. All enforcement contacts. And as the officers that are testing it right now, they want that camera on, what they're telling us. They want the camera on because the demeanor toward them, as you heard me say just a few minutes ago, has also been greatly improved. So not only is it accountability for the officer, but it's accountability also for the public. And to specifically answer that, once we get past the training for our officers, it's going to be very, very specific what it's going to be on. And then we will follow up if there's any cases that it's not.
This is from a representative of the BikeSanDiego.org. I use a bicycle for transportation. Vehicles with distracted or uneducated drivers are common. What are some enforcement or education efforts that you could enact?
Yeah, I touched it on it a little earlier. We're going to, thinking about the next, we haven't quite picked the date yet, the next 5 weeks or so, right before summer, we're going to have a campaign, again, talking about bicycle safety, sharing the road, which is critically important. And I got to tell you, again, as an avid cyclist, I've seen it both ways. I've seen it that vehicles have been distracted and they have hit cyclists. I've seen it that the cyclists have gone through red lights. They have been distracted and they have gone off into the lanes where the vehicles are or crashed into another bicycle. So it's going to be a campaign about not just for the vehicles, but also for about the bicyclists too, that no one should be distracted when they're out there on the road.
In the 90s, the San Diego Police Department was praised for implementing programs that prioritize community concerns, ensure transparency, and proactivity thought out police misconduct. Since then, there has been a shift of resources, and the focus on prevention of police strategies has shifted to a focus on reactive strategies. What are you doing to restore the quality of San Diego Police Department and regain the trust of San Diegans?
I'm not going to repeat some of the programs that I think that probably some of these were written down before some of my answers. But let me talk about something else that we're doing proactively. Again, we're one of the fewest resources that we have on our department, but yet the crime rate is so low. And part of that is because of our great community support. We talk about next door, we talk about neighborhood watch, we talk about hotspots, which I haven't touched on. Let me discuss this a little bit. We have hotspots, and what that means is as we start to see a trend, or put it this way, is here somebody had praised us for the gang takedown that we had with the West Coast Crips, which I'm going to tell you is definitely going to make all of our communities safer. That was just when we talk about the collaborative effort with not just the community, but the state, local, federal agencies, that was just really well done, a great case to make all of our communities safer. And so, let's say that there is a gang shoot in one area of the town. What we're going to do is, because of our intelligence-led policing, our hotspots, and because of our knowledge of this, is that we're going to shift resources into the area that you're going to likely have retaliation. Sometimes those resources come from that area, oftentimes they come from another area of the city. So we'll move resources from one area of the city down to where that other area would be, where we likely would have retaliation. Nothing happens. Nothing happens, okay? Because we did our job and there was no retaliation. What happens though is that there's no statistic that we can put because nothing happened, because thankfully it didn't happen. But by the same token, let's say we move some of the resources from another area of the city, and let's say there was a few burglaries up there, or someone got robbed, I also can't tell you with 100% certainty that if those officers were up there, that wouldn't happen either. So that's a way that we proactively go out and fight, deter crime, to prevent crime, and to apprehend criminals.
Why do you oppose the recommendations of the city federal judge and the defense attorney to settle cases of police abuse against occupiers and force a costly trial using taxpayer dollars to defend public misconduct, police misconduct?
Again, for any ongoing case that might be litigated, I can't specifically comment on it. But again, as far as there's process and everything, and we'll let the court system to decide this. But if it's a specific case that's being litigated, I can't specifically talk about it if it's coming up for trial.
All right, thank you. How are San Diego Police Department officers trained to handle transgender people with cultural competence? Given the extremely high danger for gay and transgender people in prison, what policies are in place to ensure the arrestees are placed as safety as possible when arrested? Is San Diego Police Department willing to set up a task force to ensure that the safest possible policies are in place?
Once the individual is taken to county jail, that is out of our jurisdiction. So I think potentially that question should be for whatever jail that individual might be taken to, what policies and procedures that they have out there. But I can tell you that for our custom and practice is to treat everyone with dignity and respect.
Some of these questions were asked, but there's two that stand out. Bad roommates, how to handle. I like that one. I guess we could cause about disturbances and stuff. And in the Ku Klux Klan, is it in San Diego?
I'm not aware of the Ku Klux Klan in San Diego. I'm not aware of that. If there's any organized, I mean, obviously we do have hate crimes. We have individuals, so maybe a specific, you're asking that. But whatever group is out there that would dispel hate against someone, we can't have that. And if someone knows about that, please let us know, because we want all of our communities working together. Everyone, again, should feel safe no matter where you live. And then the other question, if you have a bad roommate, well, have. There's lots of resources that are out there, and we encourage you to take proactive steps to make sure that all of our communities are safe, that you're safe. Promise.
I think I put that one about the bathroom. Okay, so we have come to the end of our thing. Maybe we can take like 2 questions from the audience if you want. I see some people came in later, like 2 because young lady.
I'm familiar with your predecessor because I covered him when I was up in the Bay Area. He was chief of police in San Jose. But having lived myself in San Francisco, New York, and Los Angeles, how surprised are you that the misconduct sexually by officers took place here and not in those other large metropolitan cities?
You know, I can't speak for any other city regarding what the issues that they may have. When I spoke about 1.3 million calls that we have, but I will tell you, anytime, because of our high standards in our department, that we hold ourselves to a culture of excellence within our police department, anytime I hear about misconduct, I'm extremely disappointed. Our department is disappointed.
Yes, young lady.
Me?
Yes.
I'm a frontline worker. I work in a safe house for battered women, and some of the concerns that the advocates have was the surveillance of Jane Doe. Because she is an assault survivor, and because her perpetrator is a cop, we were concerned about her being surveilled for the 23-day period, and we want to know, would that put her in further danger of somebody finding out where she is, so there'd be further harassment, abuse, etc.
I appreciate the question, but again, anything that has to do with any litigation about our department, I'm not at liberty to discuss it.
All right, I'm just going to take 2 more because young man.
I was a victim of identity theft. It was a simple case. And the trouble, it went on for a whole year. They said there's only 6 detectives to follow up on any crime like that. I don't know if that's your jurisdiction, but I see a lot of policemen giving out tickets for the homeless with an empty, with an open container. I see the patrol on a motorcycle up here in Hillcrest giving out citations for jaywalking, but 6 detectives saw, okay, a crime that the state was milked out of $25,000. Where is your priorities of resources?
No, that's a great question, and I want to answer it this way. You know, we had many different questions that was asked here today, everything from bike safety to homelessness to other areas. Different communities have different community concerns. Every community, what someone might think is a very important area, somebody else might not think it's as important. In another area, somebody might think even something else is more important. We're a police department that is going to work with the communities of all communities with all community concerns. Now, regarding your issue with the identity theft, you bring up a very interesting point, is because, I want to bring this up. Everybody knew who the stranger was in the park. Stranger danger, right? You're the stranger. Who's the stranger on the internet now? And as we talk about the cyber security, as we talk about the Internet of Things, everybody, well, many people now have a smartphone. Times have changed. You bring up a good point, sir, because listen to this. You could be made a victim, okay? You can be made a victim by somebody sitting in another country at a computer and steal your identity and take all of your money, and they didn't put a gun to your head, and they didn't take it that way in that violent crime. So it is critically important that as we talk about our police department, you're right, our resources are spread thin. And so we are doing the very best that we can to the cases that we have to follow up on everything. And so what's critically important too is that we all work together, as we talk about the community, all work together to make sure that we're not the victim. Make sure that you back up and you have your antivirus, and you make sure, when you talk about the internet, that you don't become another victim of identity theft. Equally as important as if you're walking down the street and you see somebody in a vehicle that might have left it unlocked, has a purse in there, a briefcase, your iPhone, whatever it happens to be, a lot of times we can make our own luck not to be a victim.
60, okay.
Thank you, and our last question over there.
You know, homelessness and drug addiction seem to be intricately intertwined. one of the biggest problems that our community faces. What specifically are you doing to try to make a change in this homelessness problem so that people have a better idea how we can intervene in a way that shows compassion for these human beings who are suffering?
We have, one of the things that we're working with when we talk about homeless issues and drug issues and mental illness issues, that some of the homeless also have issues with all of that. Some of the things that we're finding is that when we take them to get some treatment, that they get the treatment for a short period of time, they get regulated, they get, and what I mean by that, they're in an area where that it's more structured, and they're able to get the help that they need, but it's not permanent. It's not permanent. And then they're put back on the streets, and that cycle starts all over again. One of the things that we have is our psychiatric emergency response team, which is a clinician paid for by the county that works with one of our officers that are trained specifically to deal with some of these issues of people with mental illness that need additional help. And so we're working with a lot of different agencies, because it's not just one agency. We're working with a lot of different agencies to get the help that they need.
Let me try to add on, because Chief Zimmerman, obviously, I think I share your point of view that homelessness is really more about being poor than it is about being criminal, right? And that we have to change our approaches if we ever want to end this problem.
We just shape the behavior in a positive direction rather than simply punishing and beating out. The status quo is working. Not to put in alternatives to work.
I'm agreeing with you. But here's where I need to enlist your help. Because I've proposed, and the mayor has included in his next budget, an exact shift along the lines we were talking about. It's a full embrace of the housing first approach, which gets to the point that you cannot get stable if you don't have housing. It's unlikely to take the medications the chief's talking about if you don't have a place to live, right? Sir, it's not.
It's not your right to shoot.
We're agreeing with one another. Hear me out. So the proposal is to embrace the housing first approach that understands that this is very much about a medical issue and that people need help and services. Secondly, it's going to reward programs and services that show results. And so that we're not funding the same programs year after year, but the ones that we know are working are going to get the money, and the ones who don't won't. So a good example is the chief has the homeless outreach team, the serial inebriated program, both of which have been pioneered. They were started here in San Diego. They have been exported to other communities because they're so successful. Both will see an increase in funding under this proposal. Additionally, we'll see more money for Connections Housing, which is our 365-day-a-year shelter program, again, because it's showing progress. Another great one is our homeless storage facility, which is something that was really done by a group of advocates and nonprofit
Yeah, they fucking harassed that dude for doing that too.
And we're now making a city-run program with city resources. So we are doing a sea change if this budget is adopted, and that's where I need your help. Because you can imagine the folks who are not going to get their money anymore, not going to be too happy, right? But that's not my concern. My concern is moving more people off the streets and into housing. I believe this budget that's been proposed by the mayor will do exactly that. And if it's proven successful, we want to take the savings that come from people who are off the streets, reinvest them back in the programs so we get even more folks off the streets. So we're going where you're asking. I need the public support to make sure we actually implement.
Yeah, that's one of the first comments I said, is that homelessness is not a crime. So we have to have more of the wraparound services.
All right, the chief is going to stay a little after, and then you can ask her questions. We're going to close it off with Council President Gloria, but before we do, we'd like to once again extend our appreciation to the center.